in wellness every Tuesday and Thursday in May at 12 p.m. EST, right here, live online. Got a question for you all. How many of you came into work running on empty? The answer to that question is why we created this summit, because that used to be me. I am Julia B. Chiganda, joy architect and founder at Soul Therapy Media. In 2022, I experienced my own mental health crisis after attending 6 funerals in 1 year. What pulled me back was getting intentional about joy. And it changed everything about how I show up and how I help others do the same. We're a creative wellness agency built for leaders, HR professionals, and people and culture champions who are responsible for everyone else. We support organizations with immersive wellness programs, live events, and corporate branding that embed well-being into your culture. Because when your people thrive, retention improves, culture shifts, and the bottom line reflects it. This summit is that work in action. And if you're ready to bring a holistic approach to wellness into your organization, let's talk. I'm joined today by one of my amazing co-hosts, Dr. Jovan Jackson of Good News Financial and Investment Advisors. Hey, Jovan.
Hello, Julian. Hello, our amazing family. I'm so excited to be here along some amazing, phenomenal women. Yes.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, Dr. Jovan, and let's get into it.
Sure. For those who may be checking in for the first time with us, I'm Dr. Jovan Jackson, and I'm the founder of Good News Financial and Investment Advisor. We are the beacon of hope in the retirement readiness and financial wellness industries. We promise tailored educational workshops for corporate teams for maximum employee engagement, productivity, and sustainability. We also serve entrepreneurial executives who are concerned with market volatility. They're usually writing big checks to the IRS every year, and they just find themselves in this cycle of draining and replenishing their savings to finance their lifestyles or business. So we come in, we show you how to grow your money safely, drastically cut your taxes, and become your own bank so you can save and generate more income in retirement. So if any of that resonated with you, we love to connect with you after the show to see how we can bring financial wellness to you or your organization. And I also want to shout out our other two co-hosts, Kiera Fenderson of the Ambition Studio and Lakeisha Vinay of Divine Wine Jelly. We all believe that wellness is a we thing: mind, body, money, identity, community, and joy. And we're covering all of it this summit. So one last thing before we dive in, I do want to shout out our very special thank you to the Washington Informer, our official media partner, for helping us amplify the important conversations throughout our community and beyond. And if you haven't officially registered for the full summit yet, please be sure to click the link in the show notes. Once you register, you'll receive the live access links for every section directly in your inbox. So I think it's time for some giveaways. All right. So, family, I do want to announce, as you know, every show we have a giveaway. And the way you get the giveaway is by engaging in the conversation with us, engaging in the comments, dropping your takeaways, and just sharing as we're going through. And so I want to announce the past few winners of the giveaways from our last few broadcasts. Congratulations to Miss Christine Seelig and Daniela McCarthy, who won the delicious Divine Wine Jelly gift set.
And let me just say something about that gift set real quick, that Divine Wine Jelly. Because listen, Keisha did the thing with that Divine Wine Jelly, and I love me some wine. So, you know, I'm going to love some wine jelly, y'all. It is so good. And she is also one of our co-hosts for the summit. So you're going to love
You're
that
gonna
Divine
love
Wine
that
Jelly.
one. Absolutely. And then the second one for the necessary nutrition supplements from Mrs. Robin Muhammad. Big congratulations to Carol Moore. You are our winner. Thank you
Ooh,
so
ooh.
much. And then finally, for my 6-month financial planner, I want to give a big congratulations to Miss Jennifer Hudson.
Okay.
So,
Is
yes,
that like, it's like the J HUD that we know, or is that a different
no,
J HUD?
that's a different J. So please reach out to us at connect at the soultherapymedia.com or inbox Soul Therapy Media on LinkedIn to claim your gift. And please note, of course, we have a couple more giveaways coming before the month ends. So make sure you're registered and tuned in and engage with us. Don't just like what we're saying and nod your head, but drop something in the comments to let us know that what we're dropping is you're picking it up. Okay.
I love
So
it.
we'll drop the registration link for the summit in the comments so nobody misses it. Back
And
to
listen,
you.
you all, the kind of conversations we have been having and the feedback we've been getting. I mean, the good thing is when you register, you also get access to all the replays.
Mhm.
So make sure, even if you can't tune in live, you will still get access to the replays. And you'll be one of the first people to find out the details for our upcoming June wellness mixer. So there are benefits to registration. All right. So I want to get into, before we bring on today's guest, a card from our brand new daily wellness cards that I do for every section. This is a 62 card deck endorsed by a psychologist and completely tech free. Each card covers a different dimension of wellness because we believe in holistic wellness over here, and it provides you with a very simple and practical approach to improving your well-being. Leaders at IBM and other corporations are already using these cards to reset their day and think more clearly under pressure. And I'm gonna tell y'all right now, like I use them every day myself, and it just helps me get recentered. So if you want to get your team started, visit soultherapymedia.com for more details. The link will also be in the comments. So today's card is connected to our conversation with our special guest. And this card reads, dance. Turn up your favorite music and let yourself go. Dance, move freely to shake off stress, express your feelings, and reconnect with your body. Why it works. And we're going to definitely be getting into it in this conversation. Dance and movement reduce stress by releasing mood boosting chemicals like dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin. At the same time, they lower cortisol. And if any of y'all are in menopause, perimenopause, all the menopauses, you know about this cortisol conversation. At the same time, they lower cortisol levels and activate the parasympathetic nervous system, helping the body settle and emotions feel more regulated. So we are all about the dance and the movement over here. Javon, what are your thoughts about that? Because I know you mentioned earlier you love to dance. So talk.
I do. I grew up dancing. I like all forms of dance. So I am just ecstatic to hear how I never thought there was a connection to mental health. So I am all ears to hear how therapeutic this will be, in addition just to my regular enjoyment. So I'm excited for this conversation.
Likewise, likewise. All right, well, I'm going to see you a little bit later, Javon. We're going to go ahead and introduce our special guest and get into it. I will see you soon.
See you soon.
All right, so you all, most of us were taught that mental health is a mind game. Think positive, reframe your thoughts, talk it through. But what if your breakthrough that you've been looking for isn't in your head at all? Today's guest started her career as a professional dancer, performing with some of the biggest names in music, including LL Cool J, Miss Lauryn Hill, Tiwa Savage, Wizkid. But somewhere along that journey, she discovered something that changed the direction of her life entirely. That movement doesn't just express how we feel, it can actually heal. That discovery took her from the stage to the therapy room. Today, she is a board certified dance movement therapist, a licensed creative arts therapist, and the woman her community knows as the dancing therapist. I love that. Because listen, if you all know anything about me, I love to dance, and I always say hashtag dance is my therapy. So I'm here for all of this. But today, she's not here to teach you choreography. She is here to show you why your body has been holding the answer to your emotional wellness all along, and to give you tools that you can start using today. So, if you all could help me welcome Miss J. Lynn Thomas. Hey, listen, we started out dancing. We started out dancing. I
We
love
gotta
it.
come in
I'm here
correct.
for it.
We gotta come in correct.
Y'all, this is gonna be such a fun conversation. I have been so looking forward to this. So, welcome, Jalen. I am so
Thank
glad
you.
you were able to join us for the summit, and I already know that people are going to get so much from what you're going to share, and just what we're going to get into in this conversation. Um, so, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we're going to get into how you and I actually met.
I know. Yes. So, first of all, thank you so much for that introduction. That was wonderful. I was giggling before I came on. And thank you, of course, so much for including me on this conversation. I love how it's holistic, and I love how you are understanding how powerful dance is a role in our well being and our overall health. So, I'm excited to be here. Yes, as you said, I am a dance and movement therapist. Sometimes I'll refer to it as DMT, but that's the same thing. I am licensed as a creative arts therapist in the state of New York, and then I am nationally board certified through the American Dance Therapy Association. That's our licensing board. And yeah, the degree requires a master's degree. It requires thousands of clinical supervised hours, internship, and then also postgraduate. And then we have our continuing education requirements as well. And
Mhm.
then we are responsible to our code of ethics. So this is a fully fleshed out program and a fully fleshed out modality that I love that more and more people are interested in learning, as the field, the mental health field, is now understanding that you can't heal without your body. And so, you and I, coming from a dance background, and anyone else who enjoys dancing, you've already lived firsthand the impact of that. And so I've always been interested in the two going together. And
Mhm.
now I'm a dance therapist, the dancing
I
therapist at
I
that.
I love your title so much, and
Thank you.
um, because I think we've been so entrenched in the traditional Western ways of looking at mental health,
Hmm.
and we're going to probably talk. Well, no, we're definitely going to talk a little bit more just about how our bodies have this ancestral knowledge, but we just didn't realize
Yes.
what that connection was until it became more formalized. So I love that you call yourself the dancing therapist. Listen, I'm here for all of it. And I want to level set this conversation. I touched on this some in the card, but I really want people to understand that this is something that is ingrained in you, right? So dance doesn't just lift your mood, it rewires your brain. It's that whole mind body connection.
Hmm.
Every time you dance, the combination of rhythm, music, and physical coordination triggers a release of dopamine, serotonin, and endorphins that improves how you feel and respond under pressure. So I'm always about, when I talk about mental health and wellness, and to make it clear, I do not have a degree in therapy. I am not licensed. I am not clinically whatever, right? So I want to make sure people understand the difference between the two, right?
Yes.
But I have done a lot of work in my own journey and healing and understanding how my body works, how my mind works, what's the connection.
Hmm.
So I'm always big on making sure that there's science attached to whatever it is saying that is going to work, because I've learned, and I know this is for me, but I know this for most people, once you understand the why and the how behind what you're doing, you're actually more
Mm.
inclined to do it, and you're also more inclined to continue practicing it, because you start realizing, okay, you may not feel it right away, but with consistently doing certain things, it's eventually going to start improving how you feel. So
Absolutely.
before we get into the science, I really do want to talk about one, how we met, and then really get people to understand what your journey was like to getting you from being a professional dancer on all these stages. Because listen, we love us some LL Cool J and Lauren Hill and all things.
Ladies love
Um,
him. Yes.
he knew it, right? He knew it.
Yeah.
Um, and at the same time, you were actually able to take what you had already been doing all your life and then really almost pivot to use it in a way that it was less about entertainment and more about how do we use this as a way to heal our community, right? So let's start with how we met, because when we're preparing for this conversation, I had to go back and look, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's been 13 years since we
How
met, which is
how has it been
crazy.
that length of time?
Crazy. It's just crazy. And I wrote a LinkedIn post about this. So for those of you who don't know, I also grew up in the performing arts. I've performed all over the US and the Caribbean, doing East African dance music, drama, all the things. And I actually didn't realize at the time that that was healing to my body. I just knew I
Yes.
always loved performing because I just felt so good when I left the stage.
Hmm.
Um, but in hindsight now, with everything that I know, I'm like, oh my gosh, like not only did it help me stay fit and engaged, but it also really improved my self-esteem.
Yes.
And as much as I, tried to get away from my Africanness when I was younger, the older I got, the more I was like, oh my gosh, I am so fortunate. And that
Absolutely.
led me to meet, Nicole DeWeaver, who was hosting her very first Art Saves Lives intensive. And I just love
Yes.
that name, Art Saves Lives.
It's so
Uh,
accurate.
it's
Yeah.
extremely accurate.
Hmm.
And that's where you and I met in St. Martin in the Caribbean 13 years ago, teaching young people all the creative things.
All the creative things, absolutely. Yeah, that was a magical time and it just
It
felt
really
so
was.
aligned. I don't know if you know this, but for that first iteration of Art Saves Lives, I actually was originally just coming as like a guest of a fellow friend, Daisha Graff, who was also
Oh,
teaching.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And we were talking about it, and Daisha was like, I feel like it might be good that you're there in case someone can't make it, and you might be able to be a teacher if for some reason someone can't. And
Yes.
that's exactly what ended up happening. And so I was able to
Oh,
dive
wow.
into like hip hop culture, hip hop dance, hip hop history, and
I
how
love it.
that, the healing properties of hip hop dance, et cetera. So yeah, that's how that worked out. But I
Look,
love that we crossed paths in such a transformational experience.
oh my gosh. And the way
Hmm.
that she's continued to grow that organization and
Yeah.
really support young people in the Caribbean. Now, it used to be just St. Martin, but I understand now they're coming from all over the
Yeah.
Caribbean now for this week-long intensive, which it's just phenomenal. But it just goes to show there are no coincidences.
There are not. Just alignment.
That I love that. And that's one of my favorite words is absolutely alignment. So that said, tell us how you went from being this, performing artist that I'm sure is traveling all over the place, doing all these amazing, things, to now being a dance therapist where you're still using those skills, but just different.
Yes. Yeah, I credit it to starting really in middle school.
Mm,
And not because dance therapy as a field was on my radar at that time, but because I was a young Black girl maneuvering the different systems that were impacting me and my life and my sense of self and development. And, I was in therapy at that time and then at different times throughout my childhood and also young adulthood to support me through that process of growing up and meeting those developmental markers while contending with these different systems. And I remember in middle school having a therapist say to me that she was so impressed that despite the different factors that I was dealing with and the different, things coming at me from the different angles and where I was at developmentally in middle school, all the things are changing, that I was still able to have such a deep felt sense of my body and my emotions and
mm,
awareness of what was happening for me. And she really reflected how unique that was. So I remember, I mean, she didn't use those words because middle school
yeah.
I wouldn't have been
Yeah,
able
yeah,
to
yeah, yeah,
absorb
yeah.
that language, but I always was like, okay, I mean, this is still really hard, but sure, okay.
Yeah. And
And
do you
then
mind sharing, like, were there specific things that you were dealing with in middle school that took you into therapy, or was it just generally the middle school experience and that transition between, being a young person in elementary school to now you're about to be almost an adult in high school?
Yeah, so I think that's a great question. I think, well, I know it was layered, right? So we
Mm.
have, yes, of course, that like transition from middle school to high school. I don't know of many people that say it's their favorite time in life.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of challenges with that, right? But then this was also set at the time my family was living in a suburb of Portland, Oregon.
Mm.
So there were not other people that looked like our family.
Ah, yeah.
And at the time, the atmosphere in that area was not very supportive of Black families. And so
Mm.
I
Okay.
was experiencing that in every space that I was in,
Yeah.
layered on top of already the difficult transition of being in middle school and
Yeah.
maneuvering life, but then also, receiving these messages from people that were supposed to support and care for me that I'm not good enough
Mm.
based on, the color of my skin and all these different attributes that I
Yeah.
was born with. So those really were the factors for why I was in therapy. And,
Yeah.
I had different therapists who had different levels of understanding of that. But I remember this first therapist, like that was the piece that she was able to understand, even though we had different identities, she was able to understand what I was contending with and
Yeah.
how detrimental it was. And that like somehow you're still able to access what's happening in your body because that's not normally
Mm.
the pattern
Yeah.
when people are overwhelmed, right? It's not
Yeah.
normally the pattern when someone doesn't feel like they have a safe space. These
Yeah.
are normally situations where we tend to disconnect from our body and we tend
A
to figure out different
hundred
ways of
percent.
getting through.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I remember that being the first time that that was reflected to me. And, my parents were very supportive of me, of therapy in general, which was
Yeah.
amazing. That's
Yeah.
says a lot. That's not always the case.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But
Very
my
true.
parents were very supportive of, the therapeutic process. And so I stayed in therapy in high school and as well in undergrad, and had that reflected again at different points in time. And I realized, and we realized together collectively with my therapist, that this role that dance was playing for me was this protective factor. It was,
Mm.
on so many levels. Yes, with the physical aspects that we talk about and we hear
Yeah.
highlighted with like, the serotonin and the
Yeah.
reducing cortisol, et cetera. But even more, having a space where I felt a sense of mastery in a
Mm.
greater environment where I'm told I'll never be good enough based on attributes I was born with was a
Mhm.
protective factor. Having a space where, I'm seen deeply. And that's one of the things I really love with the creative arts is that
Yeah.
you're seen fully and
Yeah.
entirely, right? And
Yeah.
when it's movement and you're moving with other people, you're not just seen, you're also deeply felt. So
Mm.
having a space where I'm having this reprieve from the rest of society, but in this dance space, I'm able to be deeply seen and deeply felt was a protective factor. And
Mm.
then, of course, the emotional expression part of it, right? At this point in time, I'm training in a wide array of styles. And so I'm getting to express so many different, not just emotional experiences, but things that are about my story. I'm getting to imagine different possibilities for myself as I try on these different movements and characters.
So
And
just
I'm
for
able to
clarity, were
create.
you doing like dance as you were in middle school? Was that part of what you? Oh, okay. So that was
Yeah.
something that was embedded in your childhood, basically, and just growing
It
up.
was,
Okay.
thankfully. Yeah, my
Yeah.
first studio was a Black-owned ballet studio in Portland, Oregon. And
Oh.
instead of competitions, we did annual productions of the Nutcracker. So there was this like, this collective community creation every year that we're
Yeah.
working on. But then there was also this like opportunity to work towards being Clara, the main character, right?
Mm.
So there's this
Mm.
like marker of mastery that's happening within there. And then
Yeah.
because of who the owner was, I was protected and really like so much love was breathed into me,
Mm.
and that was
That was
like
really like your
really
safe
imperative.
haven then.
It was my safe haven.
Yeah. So
Exactly.
then you went from, that obviously turned into a career. What was
Yes.
it that had you make the shift from being a career dancer to now realizing, okay, I really want to look at how can I use what I know, what I've been doing all my life, but differently?
Yeah, so I think it was a combination of things. One, like so many dancers, I had an injury, and we start to think
Uh,
about how dance is going to be in our life differently,
yes.
right?
Yep.
So I had an injury at the time that I thought was, that was it. I didn't think I was going to be able to dance anymore. That's definitely
Mm,
not been the case, but at the
yeah.
time I was concerned about that.
Yeah.
So I started to think about, well, if I were to apply dance differently, what could it look like? And so that started the, questioning and then reaching out to different mentors and people I was in community with.
Yeah.
And I was actually in Cuba when I had this conversation with it, was doing like a whole 3 week dance and drum tour across Cuba at the time. So it was a
Mm,
mixture of musicians and dance enthusiasts, and just doing the best I could with what was going on with my knee. And I had a person tell me, like, I hear you're interested in mental health. She I remember her saying, "You will make more money if you just go as like a psychologist." She was
Mm,
like, "But it sounds like it would be more in alignment if you would explore the two of mental health and dance together." And so that really sat with me. And I've always been a person who moves from alignment,
yes.
not necessarily of what the correct way is to
Mm-hmm.
go. That's always worked out for me. So why
Yep.
would I stop now? Right. So when I got back from that trip, I started to research more what's out there and discovered that there is a credentialing of dance therapy that's a field.
Mm-hmm.
And
And I feel
so
like it's fairly new because I don't feel like that's something we really have heard a lot about.
it's so we'll talk into the definition of dance therapy and
Okay,
how we
okay,
frame it. But
okay,
in
okay,
terms of a field understood in the United States, it's been since the 1940s. So it's been
okay,
around for quite a while. Yeah.
okay,
So yeah, about 80 years or so. So it's been
okay.
a field for a while.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's instituted in hospitals, in the school systems, nonprofits,
Mm,
outpatient clinics. I mean,
yeah.
it's in so many spaces. The East Coast iteration of dance therapy, as it started, was mostly in the hospital setting, and then the West
Interesting.
Coast iteration of it, there was a lot of work with dance professionals who wanted to, dive deeper into the mental health aspects of what we were
Mm,
doing and the impact on that. So, kind of both of these pillars were I guess, growing roots in the US
yeah.
as an industry, as it was understood in that way during that time.
Interesting. So
Hmm.
it's been around for a while, but I feel like now mental health has become such a topic of conversation because we really can no longer avoid it, which is
We
part of
can't.
why we are doing this summit,
Yes.
giving people resources because everybody responds differently, everybody learns differently, everybody reacts differently to, what might be brought to you to help you on your own journey to wellness.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, I know you mentioned talking about like what is dance therapy. Let's get into that some so people really understand like what that is and how that is different from traditional therapy outside of just dancing, right?
Absolutely. So I'll start off with the American Dance Therapy Association definition, and then kind of like the four things that we think of under that definition.
Yeah.
And then I'll go a little different layer after that. So yeah, the American Dance Therapy Association defines it as a psychotherapeutic use of dance and movement, and it's for the emotional, the social, the cognitive, and the physical integration of the individual. And it's all for the purpose of improving health and well-being. And some of the pillars underneath that is what you said earlier about movement is a language. It's also our first language, right? We don't
Mm,
necessarily think about that, but before we had words and
yeah.
before we could like communicate verbally, movement is how we communicated. And it's how we still communicate. I think we've heard that up to 80% of communication is nonverbal. So it's not
Yeah.
what you say, it's how you say it, right? All of
Yeah.
those things that are embedded. So movement never stops being a form of communication. And
Mhm,
so as dance movement therapists, we understand that verbal communication and nonverbal communication are an equal playing field. One is not
mhm,
above the other, right? The other part, I also heard you mention the mind, body, and spirit. They're all interconnected.
mhm,
And understanding that any changes that we make on an embodied and movement base also shifts our spiritual and our psychological well-being.
mm,
A lot of times the angle is the cognitive way of
yes,
shifting, but like we said, even playing field, right? If
mm,
I'm shifting on a movement and embody perspective, I'm also making those changes. It's
100%,
another route that I can go through it.
100%.
We also understand that movement, yes, it's expressive and it's artistic, but it's functional, it's communicative, and it's developmental. So, like we were talking about the developmental stages in which I was dealing with all of those things and how that intertwines with our movement is a
Yeah.
key thing that we understand. And then the last piece of that is that we understand that movement is an assessment tool and an intervention. So that's really key into how we work as therapists.
Mm,
So this is the understanding from the ADT, or the American Dance Therapy
yeah,
Association. I want to drop one more layer underneath. I am
yeah.
blessed to be in community with some amazing dance movement therapists. One is Black Magic Association, which is a 501c3 that is organized by um, Ebony Nichols and Mynisha White and Bria Campbell, who are all three DMTs. And they created a safe space for Black DMTs that want to deepen our work and to do it in a way that is culturally specific and responsive. And
Mm,
so we really work to reorient our work in a way that has African traditions as our foundation, not just our foundation, but also as a container. So the additional parts that we understand operating from this way is that the first definition spoke about the individual, right? But in our
Yeah.
ways of operating, we understand that the individual and the collective are intertwined. You
Yeah.
can't separate it. And a lot of
Yeah.
Western therapy tends to stop at the individual, but we
Yeah.
understand this concept of Ubuntu, where I am because we are, and we are because I am. You can't separate the two. If
And that
one or
that
both,
actually, yeah, that actually ties exactly into our theme for this summit, which is
beautiful.
wellness is a we thing,
It's a we.
right? Because we
Exactly.
really heal in community, and that is
Yes.
we're meant to be social creatures. And as I'm sure you heard, there is this whole statistic about the loneliness epidemic and all of that
Yes.
going on. And I do think some of that is because people are trying to do so much by themselves and in their heads
Yep.
versus realizing that, you know what, there it really has to be, if you're really looking to be well, it has to be more than just here. Like, and I'm sure you've heard of the book The Body Keeps the Score.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, that book, it was so eye-opening, but it really spoke to me in terms of, why we don't heal when we're just talking about what we're going through, because so much of the trauma and the challenges, the stress lives in our bodies.
Yes.
And this is why stress is such a factor in illness, in physical illness. So
Yeah.
releasing all that through dance and community, 100%. I
You
agree.
have to have
Yeah,
community. We
yeah.
can't do it by ourselves. And these other pieces are opened up in our understandings of how we, as more decolonized Afrocentric therapists operate, because we start with that, right? Like you just
Mhm.
said, we can't do it in our heads by ourselves. It
Yeah.
has to be as a collective. We hear a lot about intergenerational traumas. So yes, that's
Mhm.
also embedded in our movement, but also the intergenerational wisdoms is encoded in our
Yeah,
movement as well. Our
yeah,
spiritual practices always have movement and dance incorporated. Our dances, our social dances, our traditional dances encodes our identity, whether it's individual, familial, collective, societal, and it stores our history. You can literally study social dances throughout our cultures,
yeah,
different regions, how they interlapped, and you can historically understand what was happening for the people because all of that is embedded. And in that as well, the lessons, the tools, the information for how we've maneuvered different hardships like overcoming oppression, liberation movements, rebellions, uprisings, activism, movement and dance has always been a key part of that. The
yeah,
preparation, this keeping the collective together and well, and then how do you unpack of what's just happened after we've reached that next stage
yeah,
of our
yeah,
growth. So
yeah.
this is like the work, thankfully, for the communities that I'm in, that we hold everything. So yes, those
Yeah.
other aspects that we touched on, but it's from this like deeply embedded space that we move, and we understand that movement can and is in our generations and our
100%.
cultures.
100%. And so interesting that you say that because, as I mentioned, being able to perform East and Central African dance and
Yeah.
music and drumming and all the things, at the time that I was doing it when I was younger, it was very much about, being on stage and showcasing, I got the skills, and, you
Yeah.
feel good when people are clapping for you
Of
and, you're like,
course.
hey, let's go.
Yes.
But now, as an adult, in hindsight, to your point, I now see the wisdom that is embedded in a lot of the movements, which are, a lot of somatic movements that are actually about release. And I'm like, oh my gosh, our ancestors, they knew. They knew, right? And
They
sometimes you
knew.
gotta, it's kind of like, trying to get a child to eat their vegetables. Sometimes you gotta bake it into something that looks a little more appetizing so they'll do it without
Yeah.
knowing that's what they're doing.
Yep. Yep.
So,
Exactly.
I feel like as I get older and I really learn about movement and somatic movement in particular that helps to really release certain things, from your body, I recognize now, oh my gosh, so all those movements, that's why I was able to like move past certain things and things that
Yes.
may have really taken other people out. Like, okay, well, I'm dancing, let me get it out, and then I get back
Yes.
to it. And it was very much, I think, just an assumption, but now I realize like, no, that a lot of that had to do with the dance itself,
Yes.
but also the community and being connected to other people in a group where we're all, working towards the same thing. We all just loved being on stage and sharing our culture.
Mm.
So even with that, there was also healing for me in really
Yes.
learning to love myself, my culture by practicing it.
Yeah, and what's beautiful about that is you're experiencing that, you're having the release, you're in community with the people on stage with you, but you're also in community with all the people that did that dance before you.
Yeah.
And you're going to be
Oh,
in community with all the people that came after you. So, yes,
yeah.
it's your healing. Yes, it's the collective healing on stage, but it's a continuation of a healing and it's a setting the stage for future healing. And
Oh,
that's when we understand that deeper level. We
yeah.
understand there's so much more encased in it, right? The
Yeah.
release, yes, 100%. The
100%.
expression, the sense of mastery, but it's also a duty of carrying on healing for the next generations and being
Yeah.
respectful to those that came before you
Yeah.
of paving this pathway for you to heal in the way that you're healing, right?
Yeah.
That's the entirety of what we're doing.
No,
So yes, that's
100%.
beautiful.
Yeah. And you know, it's interesting. I think also just being a student of the arts and especially performer, like the one thing that my sisters and I always joke about, because we grew up on stage and we were trained to have that stage presence and,
Yes.
all those things, right? I can never just watch a show as an audience member. I'm always automatically looking at it through the lens of a fellow performing artist. But in that
Yeah.
sense, and I'm sure you could probably relate to that, it's hard. I'm like, oh, they should have been more coordinated. Yeah, the spacing, like those types of things, right? But what I've also found really interesting is the more that I've become conscious about how dance made an impact on me beyond just being able to travel and share my culture,
Yes.
the more I'm actually able to see other cultures where there's so many similarities in
Mhm.
some of the movements, some of the dance, it's so yes, very much, African and African diaspora cultures, but I have seen so many just semblances of, oh my gosh, that looks like something we do in our culture. So I feel
Yeah.
like dance and movement and music, they're also such universal languages. And I feel like that's part of why, regardless of whether or not you can ever talk through what you're going through, if you can move through it,
Yes.
it's a whole different thing.
Yeah. And I love the observation that you're bringing light on about, the resonances that happen across cultures, and that happen at different times. And so, one of the things I thought when you were speaking earlier, the release piece, but also movement, now that we understand the greater context, is also preparatory. And it also, gets us ready for what we're about to deal with in the future, what we're dealing with right
Mm,
now. And
yeah.
so, our work as dance movement therapists with this foundation is also to be curious about what are our movements right now saying? What is it preparing us for collectively, whether it's our culture, globally, et cetera? And how can we really highlight that and drop into that further? I think a perfect example is during the pandemic. I be
Mhm.
on TikTok. I watch the dance challenges. I mean, come on, it's dance.
Oh my gosh, they were like
I be in there.
311 a day, but yeah.
There are, but there was one style that was really popular, and it was, like the hips. Did you see all those
Oh
dance
yeah.
challenges?
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
the
Mhm.
Jersey stiff hips, and that was the one that became, really viral and really popular.
Mhm.
If you zoom out and think about the hips, which now I love the conversations about, oh yeah, trauma stored in the hips, and we're like,
Yes,
yes, our ancestors knew that, but I'm glad we're all
yes.
here. But if you understand that and what the power of the hips are and why moving the hips, especially when we're collectively experiencing a trauma globally,
Yeah.
it makes sense that this was the dance out of all the dances on social media was the
Mm,
one that everyone was doing across the globe, right? And so
interesting.
now we're
Yeah.
using this type of lens as we look at movement as another layer of understanding how healing it is collectively, globally, and
Yeah.
individually.
And I'm so glad you mentioned that actually, because even beyond the TikTok, like a lot of our cultural dances do have, there's so many hip movements
So
like
many.
embedded in, if we want to get real, that's where twerking came from, right? But
Sure
at
did.
the end of the day, again, that's just like some of that wisdom that's embedded in our bodies that we don't even
Yes.
realize. But the thing that I did learn, you're right, like we carry so much of the trauma and all those things in our hips and in our, what do they call it, the solar plexus, but like in that area. And so moving that is actually part of that healing. So let's
Yes.
let's talk about the fact that, the reality is mental health resources are not equally accessible, right?
Right.
um and dance movement therapy does require a trained clinician, which can create a bit of a barrier. But for
Yeah.
someone who doesn't have access to a dance therapist, I would love for you to share your 3 tips that we're about to get into on what they can do on their own, right now, and just to start using movement as a mental health tool.
Awesome. I have 5 prepared, so if we have more time, let me
All
know.
right. All right. Well, let's start
But we
with the
got the
three because
3.
I
We got
also
the
want
3.
you to
Yes.
demo 2 of them, and
Okay, perfect.
then yeah, because and I'll see if there's questions from the audience too. So let's bring those tips up because I really, the one thing we're very mindful of in these conversations during the summit is that people walk away with very practical things they can put into
Yeah,
practice today that
absolutely.
doesn't require a whole lot except their commitment to doing the practice. So let's get into it.
Absolutely. Great. So, as an overview, before I jump into all 3 of them, I just want to say, I want you to say yes to movement. You
Mm,
already feel the impulse to move. You
yeah.
already know when to move. When you get that delicious plate of food, you already start wiggling, right? At least I do. I don't know about you. I already start doing this little dance right here, right?
Who can do
We
that to you? Yeah.
It can do that. Like we already have the impulse. So say yes to movement. And the 4 questions I like to ask myself or encourage anyone to ask as it comes to movement and where do I start? What do I need? What needs space? What needs releasing? What needs energizing? And what needs soothing? All right. So those are great places to
Mm,
start. And if you don't
okay.
remember any of those at all, I would encourage you to start with what needs space. Oftentimes we jump into fixing, into regulating before we actually observe and get curious about what's coming up. And
Yes,
it's in that space that we really can make transformative change and we get the full information. So if you don't
yeah,
remember any other
good.
question, what needs
What needs
space
space.
and say yes to the movement in that. Okay.
Oh,
So I
yes.
wanted to give that as an overview, but now
I
we
love
can,
that.
yes.
I love it. I love it. All right, let's get into these tips and then we're going to go through them and then you'll demo a couple of them.
Beautiful. So the first one is the moving body scan. This is where I find a comfortable position, standing, sitting, lying down, and close my eyes and change my focus into an internal one. And I examine what's coming up for me, whatever pace that I have time for, starting from the very top of my head and slowly working my way down towards my toes. I think we've probably heard of this in different spaces. And
Uh,
with the moving aspect of it is this first piece that I said about saying yes. We're not just noticing what's coming up sensation wise and communication wise in this part of our body. We're also saying yes to any movement impulses at the same time, because that's going to take the awareness and the information to the next level,
uh,
right? And understanding what's present. And
okay.
it also creates this practice of trusting our intuition and saying yes to movement.
Yes. I
Mhm.
love that. All right. And the second one.
The second one is also another very popular one, which is bilateral stimulation movement. And this comes from the understanding and modality of EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing therapy. And it's movement that alternates between the right and left sides, and it activates the left and right sides of your brain in an alternating pattern. And one of the impacts is to calm your nervous system. When I demonstrate this, I'm going to do this specific to social dances. I know that the butterfly tap is a very popular one that a lot of
Mm,
people use, and
mm,
this is where I'm activating and stimulating the left and right sides. But I want us to take a moment to think of how many social dances we have that already have this incorporated into what we do. Right.
mm.
So before we got in, I'm going to be completely honest. I was dancing. I was doing one of my favorite 90s dance
I love
groups.
it.
It was the prep, and the prep is this move and this. Right? That
Oh my
90s
gosh, that
party
takes
dance
me
we know that's
back.
going on the
What?
house party, right? Or what about the WAP? Right?
Yeah.
And these are social dance, Harlem Shake,
Oh
social dances
yeah.
that all have the right and left. And when you look at when these dances were popular, when they came into being, and what was happening politically and what was happening historically at that time, you start to make some connections of, oh, this had additional functions for us as a
Yes.
people, right? Um,
100%.
yeah, so those would be
Love
some
that.
examples. So I would encourage you, if you're thinking of bilateral stimulation,
Yeah.
you can of course do the butterfly taps. If you're in a meeting, you can put your hands on your lap underneath the table. Nobody has to know. Yeah. And I
Mm,
like to go at a rhythm that is like a heart rate speed at rest. That's the pace that
mm,
we want to go at. But if you have a bit more privacy, or you want to do it with, a meeting as an opening or an ending or the collective, pick a social dance that has this aspect of the right and left and do it
yeah.
for 2 to 5 minutes, and then really experience not just the joy that you collectively experience, but also the calming effect that it has on your nervous system.
Mm,
So that's bilateral
mhm.
stimulation.
Yeah.
And there's lots of science behind that one. So I
I
know that's
love
why
that.
people love it. And
Yeah.
then the third one is moving between extremes. Unfortunately, right now, a lot of us are on the spectrum of survival mode right now. There's a
Mhm.
lot coming at us. And when we're in this space of survival mode, Oftentimes, all or nothing thinking or black or white thinking becomes dominant, right? And we're not able to look at nuance in the grays, and we're not able to make decisions from a place of being firmly grounded in a full, expansive perspective of what is and what our options are. And so I love this practice of moving between the opposites, where you pick a dynamic, you pick a body part, and you pick a length of time. And by dynamic, I mean it can be fast or slow, it can be strong or soft, or smooth or staccato. And
Mm,
you alternate between the two movements, for whatever length of time that you agree on. So if I'm going with my hands, for instance, and I want my movement to be a shake, I
yeah.
would alternate between a fast shake and a slow shake, and a fast shake and a
Mm,
slow shake. And as I do this, yes, I'm moving the extremes, but now I'm going to start to fill into the transition between the fast into the slow. And notice that actually fast, medium, and slow are present. Okay, what does that sensation feel like in my body? Well, the shaking feels like a release, like we talked about the R and the release,
mhm.
but the slow feels really soothing, and I get a chance to feel the like tingling sensation from the blood coming to my hand when I'm moving it really
Mm,
fast. So you're deepening your awareness, you're noticing the nuance, you're embodying that change. Remember, we said it's an evaluation tool, but it's also an intervention. Me making this change in my body is already shifting my psychological state out of this space of seeing things as either or, and now I'm
mm.
able to shift everything to experience the range in between. So those are my three
Good.
tools.
You know what? It's interesting because I've really started using shaking a lot more, just shaking
Mhm.
my hands and shaking my body.
That was one of them that
Um,
I had because yes, I love
yeah.
shaking. Mhm.
I do it when I'm in a space of like, I really need to calm down
Yes.
quickly. And I realize that it is something that actually calms me down
Yeah.
fairly quickly because I'm
Yeah.
releasing, right? But I had
Yeah.
never done it in the context of fast and slow. So now I'm going to
Yeah.
start doing that so I can be even more mindful. I love that. Those are
Yes.
so good. And actually, I think we may have a couple questions from the audience. I'm
Okay.
also going to bring Jovan on because I know Dr. Jovan got some questions.
Hi, Dr.
Being
Javon.
the dancer that she loves to be. I know you got questions, Dr. Jovan.
Oh man, this was so rich. I got so
Oh,
much notes here, and I just was constantly reminded of my daughters. Both of them love to
um,
dance, and I'm just like, oh, I'm just going to continue. And one of them is really good, and I'm just like, I want to really encourage her to do that from a therapeutic
yes.
perspective,
Mm,
because teenagers today, they are
yeah,
dealing with a lot, and they don't
So
yeah,
have
much.
the development to articulate,
yep,
right? But
Yeah.
now, as you shared, I'm learning that she can do that, express herself. So
yeah.
I'm really excited to learn more about this.
Oh, that's
Hopefully
wonderful to
you'll
hear.
share some. I know you're going to share some ways that we can continue. So let me ask this question. I
Sure.
didn't see much from the audience unless I'm missing, but I do
Uh,
have a question. We have a lot of leaders and HR professionals who are in our audience and who may watch the replay, things like that. How does emotional dysregulation show up in how people perform, how they communicate, and just how they lead overall at work? And what kind of changes can, when someone learns to move through it rather than around it? What changes? What are the changes when they learn how to move through it instead of around it? Rather?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that could probably be a whole
a
A
whole,
whole nother.
a
Okay,
yeah,
I'm
we'll
whole
have to
sorry.
bring
separate
you
one
back for the
because
whole
I'm
there's
show.
sorry.
so
But
many layers to it,
yeah,
right? And so I think, you know, I'll keep it to the things that we've touched on within this session, because yes, there's a lot of layers that we can go to, from, based on your level, if you're a C-suite, if you're middle management, if you're frontline, what role you have within the organization, power dynamics, interdisciplinary collaborations, communication skills, like how does that show up for the consumer or who, the patient or whoever's dealing with your services, right? All of these areas are impacted, and every one of these layers has a role, right? And so in saying that, that piece of understanding that the I and the we are intertwined,
mhm,
that we can't separate the two. And so if I as an individual am unwell, the we is unwell, right?
mhm,
And oftentimes when I'm interfacing around workforce wellness is really stressing the case behind wellness from this understanding, is that it's not this frivolous thing that we're incorporating into the day and into the strategy, into the overall culture of the company. It's imperative. You will not function at your best, it
yeah,
will hurt your body bottom line, whether it's retention, whether it's call outs, whether it's your ability to create new products that are impactful to your customer service base,
Yeah.
right? All of these are impacts that are working together. And so it's imperative to have that wellness piece of it. If I am individually dysregulated, there's also studies around me physically being dysregulated. If I don't even say anything and I walk into a room full of people, I automatically impact the other people's nervous systems around them. And the
Mm,
example I give is if you've been in a meeting or if you've been in a waiting room for a doctor and everyone's kind of sitting calmly on their phone, whatever, and someone comes in super frazzled, super worked up,
Mhm.
you might notice your heart rate starts to beat faster. Your
mhm.
palms might get, no word was passed, but
Yeah,
that's the impact of this
you
complete
feel the
stranger.
energy.
You feel the
Wow.
energy. So
Yeah.
imagine if this is your supervisor.
Mhm.
Imagine if this is a high stakes meeting. Imagine if this is a direction planning for the company. And
Mhm.
this is the type of dysregulation we're dealing with. How is that impacting your decision making and the choices that you're making? It
Mm,
automatically impacts that, right? So
mm.
it's imperative that this is addressed on every level. We as
Yeah.
humans deserve to be regulated, but
Yeah.
also from a business standpoint, it's bad for your bottom line,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
Absolutely.
good. That's good.
Wow.
And actually, there is one question I see here from the audience from Daniela. She says there's a lot of videos on movement to reduce inflammation in the body, and I guess maybe she's asking about lymphatic drainage movement. That's probably a whole different conversation, but I feel like that is there like a quick tip that you can give for that?
No.
Okay,
Uh,
I figured. I'm
and
like that is like a whole
the
different.
reason why I
Yeah.
say no with the smile is because something I said earlier. I recognize that, given some of the things that are normalized in our cultures, we want a quick
Mhm.
fix, right? We want to
Yes.
figure out what is the thing that I can implement right now to get rid of
Yep.
this problem. And really, especially as a dance movement therapist, this turning to with curiosity and this giving space and allowing is such a huge piece of it.
Mm.
And so,
Yeah.
just saying
Yeah.
lymphatic drainage massages is
Yeah.
going to fix your inflammation would be reckless of me to
Oh,
say that. One, it's out of my scope of practice, right?
yeah.
So first and foremost,
Yes.
and two, there's so many different factors that could be at
Yes.
play, and that if you're just implementing this tool and thinking that fix it, you've now turned away from all these other possibilities of what's happening. So I apologize, I don't have a concise answer for
No,
that,
actually,
but
thank you for saying that. I think one, I want to recognize that you were very clear, like that is out of my scope of what
yes.
I really, but also that whole quick fix thing. I think
Yes.
that I'm glad you brought that up because in everything in life, not even just in our health and our finances and getting to the top or whatever the top looks like we want that quick fix.
Yes,
And the thing that I always say is that healing is a lifelong journey.
it
Yeah.
is.
And you've been through a lot, don't expect it to go away overnight.
That's right.
Yes.
So you have to be willing to put in the work. And then there's Carmel says she definitely needs to include these techniques in how she coaches her clients to relieve stress. So thank you. She thanks you for that.
Awesome.
It's so good. That is so good. I cannot believe we're already at the end of our
That
session.
flew by.
And it really did. But I'm definitely going to have to bring you back on. We'll have to bring you back on because there's so much we didn't get to really get
Yeah.
into. But
Okay.
I feel like what you provided was such a great way for people to get started at the
Mhm.
very least. And to your point, I mean, sometimes it's just about getting people curious so they can start exploring other things versus thinking what they're doing is what's going to keep working, even if it's not.
Exactly. Exactly.
So let our community know where they can follow you, and where can they keep reach out to you and continue practicing some of this work if you have videos and all that kind of stuff. So pulling that up, but definitely share more about how they can reach out.
Yes, perfect. So Jalen, the dancing therapist, is my handle on Instagram, and it's also my handle on YouTube. Where on YouTube I do have some videos that you can do some movement with me. I also have some dance affirmation videos where we pair the two together, which are really fun. Please definitely connect with me on LinkedIn. That is where I'm most active, and I post different bits of information as well as videos that you can have a micro reset throughout your day. The videos are all 2 minutes or less, where you can really ground yourself in that period of time. My email, yes, contact at Lynn Therapy. At the moment, I am accepting clients for embodied coaching clients. So this is for people anywhere in the world that want to, achieve a goal, and we do it from an embodied perspective. So often when people are achieving goals, I hear the language around, okay, like get rid of the fear, like you just gotta barrel through, push through, but no, we do this with
Mhm.
your body, right? And it's really done in 4 clear parts, very clear structures of getting clear on what your goal is, making a plan, executing the plan, and sustaining. I give you homework. I provide you with a toolkit of your own tailored movement tools that will help you along the journey. And it's done with accountability. So that's for wherever you live. You can reach out to me through email or on LinkedIn, whichever is easiest, and we can do a free consultation and work towards having embodied coaching. And then the other piece that I'm accepting are clients for clinical therapy. You must live in the state of New York. That is where I'm licensed. So that's who I can see. And
Emphasis on the word licensed, but I'm just
that is
saying.
where I am licensed. As we talked about at the beginning, I am licensed in the state of New York, so you must be a resident of the state of New York. But I am available for clinical therapy support, dance movement therapy, as well as EMDR therapy. I'm also trained in that modality as well. And I just want to be clear, coaching, we're addressing a specific goal, and it's plan oriented, goal oriented. Therapy is this deeper emotional, psychological work where we're doing clinical interventions, psychological education, and tools are provided from that level. So those are very different. I just want to be really clear about that.
Yes. No,
So
I'm
I have
glad.
said
Listen, we
that.
need that clarity. I am not
Yes,
mad. And oh my gosh, this was so good,
it was.
Thank
Jalen.
you.
Giovanna, I don't know if you have anything
I
that you want to
do.
say.
I would just like to ask people like Julie and I, we love to dance, right? But what about the people who don't feel like they can dance or they don't like dancing? What do you say to a person like that? Can they benefit from this type of therapeutic sessions? Can they benefit?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Again, the title is dance and movement therapy. One, of course, I'm going to argue everyone can dance, right? So
Right.
that's going to be my argument. But if we put that to the side, remember what we said, movement is our first form of communication, even before we
Yes.
had words. It is innate to all of us, right?
Yeah.
So this is accessible to all of us. I have people I work with who are like adverse to movement altogether and dance
Yeah.
altogether, and
Yeah.
they get a lot of benefit from this modality. They are
Okay.
able to build self-trust, they're working on their journey, etc. So yes,
Yeah.
this is accessible to
I
everyone.
love
Okay.
that.
Awesome. Thank you
So
for that.
good, so good, Jillian. Thank you so much for just sharing your expertise, your experience, your wisdom, your enthusiasm for what you do with our community, because that's exactly what this summit is really all about. Just giving people real tools, real practices, and just helping them make a real shift in their wellness. So thank
Oh,
you so much for
thank you
joining
so
us.
much for having me on. It's such an honor to be in this space, and I am so appreciative of the work that you all are doing. It's very much needed, it's right on time, and it's done with so much love and compassion. So, thank you.
You're
So
here for
thank
it. All right.
you.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Jalen.
Jalen. Enjoyed you. Ah, that was so
That was so.
rich.
I feel like we never have enough time. Like
I
we need to.
know. I can't wait for my daughter to see this. All right,
Yeah.
let me just remind everybody that the session will remain available on LinkedIn and YouTube. All right. So if this conversation moved you, we just ask that you would share it, post it as well with a hashtag wellness is a we thing or hashtag soul therapy wellness summit, and then forward the replay to someone who has been pushing through instead of moving through. Okay,
Mm.
and needs to hear and know that there is another way. So, our next session is coming up on Tuesday, May 26th, with Miss Kiera Fenderson, our summit co host and chief executive coach on record. And she will be interviewing Miss Amanda Miller Littlejohn, who is the author of The Rest Revolution. They'll be here to talk about why reclaiming rest isn't a luxury. So, if hustle culture has been running you ragged and you're ready for a different way to lead and live, do not miss this one. Also, if you haven't registered for the full summit yet, we can't stress this enough. The link is in the video description and your seat is on us. So, what are you waiting for? You'll receive the link to every upcoming session and directly in your inbox. Okay. So
Yeah.
visit soultherapymedia.com/summit 26. And we'll see you guys on the next session.
And remember that our live in-person soul therapy wellness mixer is coming in June. Tickets and details go to people who are registered first. And y'all, it is going to be so much fun. I mean, we've been having so much fun on these virtual conversations. It's going to be all the way live in the actual wellness mixer. And I also want to make sure that if you're looking to learn more about any of our co-hosts for the summit, myself and Dr. Javon included, definitely connect with us on our websites that you can find there. Soul Therapy Media, Good News Financial and Investment Advisors, the Ambition Studio, and Divine Wine Jelly. And many thanks again to our official media partner, the Washington Informer, a trusted voice in our community for over 60 years. Thank you all for being here. We appreciate you. And we'll see you back here on Tuesday because wellness
is a
we
we thing. Yes. Have a great day, everybody.